So one of the things I talked about in the last video was the main melody in this sort of euphoric, trancey section that sounds like this. And there's actually, it's kind of interesting how this sound is made beyond just sort of showing it in its final form like I did in the last video. So let me kind of dig into what's going on here. So there's two sampled instruments here that I made. They originally started as a sculpture patch, and I'll show you that in a minute. But with these sampler instruments, this is where I do the actual processing. So let me show you each of the parts, and then we'll take off the processing and work our way backwards from there. So the first part is this. And then I'll bring in the second part, which is basically like a harmony. And so I really liked how these two sound together. It makes like a cool kind of combined melody harmony part. And the little pulls of pitch that it kind of bends out of tune. I really like that about that. So let me show you this sound without all the processing. Here we can listen to it. I'll turn off this other one processing as well. So this is what the patch out of sculpture, but already very processed sounds like, which is really cool. It's sort of like a very organic sounding pad. And then, you know, we add in each of these effects and it really comes to life. And just to take a look at it for a moment, Gatekeeper's what's doing the rhythm here. It's similar to the Shaper Box 3 that I talked about in the other video, although in some ways Gatekeeper does a little bit less. It's not multi-band, but actually editing the envelopes and making shapes is a little easier. So, and it just sounded a little different. So here it is with Gatekeeper. The Gatekeeper is followed by OTT with a pretty high depth for OTT because you just need it. Without it, you know, it's kind of just sounds sort of small. And then this Articulate, same thing. It's really boosting just the envelope of the sound overall. So let me bypass it. So it's not quite as hyper, so to speak. Let me show you where this actually started. It started as a sculpture patch. And that looks like this here. And I'll just play some notes. So if I play a chord like this, I'm playing basically like an E minor chord here. It just goes nuts if you hold it down. I don't really know why. Honestly, like I programmed this sound and a lot of it makes sense to me, and then there's lots of it that I don't know why it does the craziness it does, but I think it's awesome. Sculpture, I mean, it's my favorite instrument of all time. Back in 2007, when I wrote Parks on Fire, I used Sculpture for the main melody of that. Yeah, still the best physical modeling synth out there. Still the most underrated virtual instrument. And still, I think, the best virtual instrument that's ever made. It also, I give it it has the worst user interface of any instrument I've ever seen. I mean, this is just like, this is unacceptable. This whole thing. I know Logic, they've, you know, reskinned a couple of their instruments. They have not gotten to Sculpture or Ultra Beat. Hopefully those are next. It's so confusing, but if you learn it, I mean, it is the absolute best. Okay, moving on. There's also a lot of processing going on here. I use this Waves Factory Auto EQ, like just cranked. And not only once, got it twice. And the second time it's even more cranked. I'll get into why. I'm gonna turn off all the effects that I have on here that kind of bring it alive. And it's a pretty dark sound. I'll leave the limiter on just so we've got some volume on this. So we still have all the detuning of the sound, but it's very dry, it's very close, and it's very dark. But as I was programming it, I could hear the potential. Like a lot of times when you're designing sounds, you have to kind of imagine like, okay, is the fundamental aspects of this, are they interesting, and am I going to be able to process this into something that has a lot of life? And so I knew with this, just because of the weird pitch variations that it does, that this would be really cool if I can, breathe some life into it with effects. So I'll add the first auto EQ by Waves Factory, and it's gonna, it dips out a lot of the lower mids and mid mids, cleans it up a little, but doesn't really add too much. The next thing is this R2 reverb fab filter, and I have this mostly wet. This adds a lot of life to it, because it gives it a sense of being in a space. It almost sounds like, like a flute or something that's played in a room. It's still very dark, but it's very organic, and this is already, I think, very musical. So it's a pretty long reverb, almost 6 seconds. And then next that's on here that I had was this PSP 85, which is a delay. You can do modulated delays. I love this plugin. I've been using it forever. Just adds a little bit like of modulation and echoes to that reverb I already had. And then this second Waves Factory equalizer is doing a lot of work. This one's really cranking the highs, getting rid of those mids. But there's still some weird rumbly stuff in the lows. So then that's followed by another EQ where I'm cutting out the lows, and there's like a dynamic band here that's sort of reining in some of this mid, just because it was clashing with everything else in the track. I think on its own, it doesn't need that much reduction there, but in context, it sort of needs it. So this was the sound, and I really like this. But this is like a pretty long processing chain, and because it has this long reverb, it's really slow to react. I needed more control over the envelope. So one of the things that I like about the recent era of Logic is there's a plugin that's called Auto Sampler, but I don't remember where it is. Under Utilities, Auto Sampler. And what this can do is you just set how many notes you want to sample. So in this case, it's like every half an octave that it's doing it. But you can set it to be every key. So right now, see, it's every 6 semitones, but you can set it to be every semitone. And then you set the range and how long you want it to sample for. And it does a great job of like looping the sustain section. So I use this all the time now. So for this, what I did was I created this auto sample. You click sample and it does its thing, and it samples each note, and then it creates a sampler track that sounds the same as your effects chain. So that was the original. Let's go back to where I had that sampler instrument here. Let me turn everything off, and I'll just play it. So play some. Let me turn it up a bit because it's really quiet. I'll just put a gain on here for the moment. And so this gives me the exact sound of that whole effects chain, but without the weird slow attack. I can control it more just in the EXS24 in the sampler thing here. I can control all the envelopes. I can add filters, do whatever. I don't think I actually am doing anything in here, but it also saves on CPU. I don't have a bunch of reverbs going. It makes it a clean starting place to be able to play this like an instrument and process it as a whole effects chain. So that's what I did. So then, you know, added all the effects and the gates, and you know, and then we have that melody. And then I think the last thing I'll talk about here is that fluttery bass sound too. It's kind of a similar. This was something that I made in Serum, and then again I have this same gatekeeper pattern here that's making it follow the same rhythmic pattern. And articulate, again blowing it out a bit. But here, if I take all this stuff off, let's just hear just kind of a bass sound. I like that bass sound, but that was just something in Serum, and I think it was kind of a long effects chain. And so I did the auto sample thing, again, to just have more control, less effects going in real time. More easy to add more processing is something that I like to do, and that I did a lot with this track. And that's it for this one. Thanks.